At 25 years old, Shelly Barnes settled gracefully into life after college. She landed a job and surrounded herself with loving friends and a supportive family. She never thought that a sharp pain in her chest one day would lead her on a detour, changing the course of her life forever.
Take me back to that day, when you were driving in the car and you noticed a lump in your breast.
I was driving to North Carolina to visit a friend. I just felt a pain. I was driving, I felt pain. So I just kind of, touched around to see what is the location of that pain. And I felt a lump. I did take the initiative to go to the doctor. I was going anyways for an annual, so I had her check it out. And she was very proactive about it. I hear a lot of stories where people, the buck kind of stops there, where if they're 25 or younger than 40, doctors usually assume that is nothing. So she was really proactive in scheduling me a mammogram. Ultrasound first, and then I got a mammogram. Then that led to a biopsy, and then a couple weeks later, I got the call that I was diagnosed with cancer.
So what was the first thing that ran through your mind when you got that call?
It's a plethora of emotions. You feel angry, scared, sad, all at once. But then you feel brave and powerful. It's really weird. I felt brave in the sense that, now I know what it is, so let's get to it.
Okay.
And I literally got the phone call on a Monday, and I had surgery Thursday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was a really fast window, and I don't think I had time to even process everything in my 25-year-old mind at the time. But, it went really fast, and in that moment, I was just kind of in fight mode, my dukes were up, so it was just let me do what I have to do.
Yeah.
But then afterwards, it kind of sinks in oh man, after the adrenaline rush is over and the shock wears off, then you have to sit with what really happened.
You were very proactive. When you first found that lump, you said, I'm going to go get this checked out. Why is that so important? To what extent does, just being self-conscious and being aware, a lifesaver?
Because things can get worse if you ignore them. So many people in our community are not proactive because there is a fear attached, not only to, being diagnosed with a disease, but also with doctors. Everybody talks about auntie who went to the hospital and never came out. But it's so important to be proactive because situations get worse. And I know in the African American community, we have a higher mortality rate when it comes to cancer because, people go to the doctor later. They don't make their health a priority.
After an immediate lumpectomy and weeks of radiation, Shelly did all she could do to beat breast cancer. But in this case, it wasn't enough. 2 years later, she was diagnosed for the second time, so her doctors decided to take another approach.
So I had my first round of chemotherapy on June 16th. It was last Wednesday. The second time, it was really, it depressed me because, as much faith as I put towards the situation, I still had to deal with the reality of it. And what does this mean? Why is this happening? I had a lot of questions, but at the same time, my questions were coupled with faith. So it was every time I had a doubt, I had to put a faith statement with it to constantly balance out the yin and yang of the entire experience. So the second time I had chemo, which was a whole different experience within itself, losing your hair everywhere. I mean, my eyebrows and lashes, I didn't have hair on my arms anymore. I was like, what's going on? But it was an entirely different experience, having to do something that you don't want to do, but you feel like you're doing it because it will make the best long-term outcome for you.
As Black women, we take pride in our hair.
Yeah.
Like that is our thing. I like to
know.
flip it. I like when it moves. What was it like for you to actually lose something that meant so much?
I just had to face what was happening, and I would be on the couch watching TV and be like, oh, there's some there's some
Yeah.
hair right there. So it did get to the point where I had to get some wigs and prepare myself. And then one day I was in the house, I took a shower, I washed it, and it was just like really coming out. So I said, let's just cut it.
Was there ever a time where you didn't feel like you were going to beat the cancer?
Yes and no. A turning point for me was getting genetic testing done. I came back positive for another gene mutation. So at that moment, I was, in my mind, you read through the statistics, you read through where it can come back. And that freaked me out because it definitely was, it was outside of the normal. Okay, you got diagnosed and we got it out. Then the statistics were, oh, it might come back in your brain or your bones or your liver. And I'm like, oh, well, okay. So that was a lot of information for me to digest. And I had to get over the fear of that. I feel like God takes special care when we cry.
Shelly looked to writing to pull her through her darkest days. She started a blog, The Frolicking Champion, and remained consistent in documenting her journey every step of the way.
They that sow in tears shall reap in joy. Wait, I get joy from my tears? This sounds like a win-win situation to me. So, let me ask you, when was the last time you had a good cry? Post.
You call yourself an advocate, not just a survivor, but an overcomer. What does that statement mean for you?
Something that can be really tragic can turn into a triumph. It can, turn into an amazing story. And I say I'm an overcomer because, survivors, I like the term, but it definitely doesn't encompass like every step along the way. And to overcome something means not only have you, overcome the physical part of it, but you've overcome the mental and the spiritual. You've learned something from it. You've grown from it. You didn't just survive. I can survive and, still be bitter and still be angry and, scared and upset. But I say I've overcome because I've been able to look at the word cancer now and remove some of the fear I have around the word. Like, I see it now and it doesn't scare me like it would years ago. So I've overcome a lot in the process.
We're sustaining our recovery by being active and staying moving.
Now serving as the vice president of the Sisters Network Washington, D.C. chapter, Shelly focuses on being a voice to young women affected by the disease. She says what could be looked at as a tragedy on one hand can be viewed as a triumph on the other.
I don't mind sharing. I'm an open book, and this voice needs a community. It is a very publicized disease, but you don't hear a lot of stories of the young women who are going through it, the African American women in particular. So I have no problem with sharing what I've been through if it in turn helps somebody else. If one person is helped, then that's all that matters.